too. I do know that it's hard. So thank you very much.
I'm quivering. I'm like a heroin addict going through withdrawal.
Well, are you pro-trans or anti-trans?
No. We're not going there.
And back to the Azerbaijani thing. I did not realize that Israel got 80% of its gas from Azerbaijan.
70.
70, okay.
Yeah. And Marshall, let me just say,
stop trying to Jew us down on how much oil we get.
Which reminds me, I have another funny joke. But Marshall, I didn't realize that you felt that I had been disrespecting you as a mod. And I apologize for that.
I'm sorry. I got a little emotional.
No.
It doesn't happen often. It just it happens.
Yeah,
it's happened enough for me to notice it. That's all.
Yeah. But on my end, is that oftentimes I come into a room and I start getting dogpiled on, and I felt that you've gleefully joined in that dogpile.
Oh, Alan, I'm sorry. I will do a much better job next time to not dogpile. I also apologize.
It's okay.
I have a question for Al. So Al,
wait, I'm not done
okay.
being culpa with Marshall. So, and the reason why is that since I've always perceived you as being on the conservative side of things, I was more sensitive to it because it's like, why is the soldier from our side shooting at me when we're engaged in this battle? So it was, if someone from the left starts dogpiling me, I expect it. But I didn't expect it from you, which is why I was more sensitive to it.
Well, Alan, I'm sorry about that, and I will next time do a much better job to not dogpile.
But you are right. When other mods interrupt, if I hear them, I will stop talking. And I wasn't doing that with you, and I should, and you're right. So I apologize for that too.
Apology accepted, water under the bridge. We don't even have to worry about it no more.
I have a question for you, Alan.
Okay, no, I have one more thing. Norm, it's Hunt Track or Michigan. This town voted in all Muslim city council and mayor, and now that city council has outlawed all pride flags, and the Jewish members of the city are upset too. But one woman, I think, and really complaining about it, and you could not.
To do righteousness is holy, and I wanted to thank you actually for that, man. For that, even though I'm a Muslim, Hashem, Allah is the same God, and I want to thank you that. I want to thank you for saying that, man. It was a conversation we had. It was a different, but I want to thank you for that, man. I've always wanted to tell you that, but I just never got a chance to.
You see, that's nice.
That's nice. Thank you very much.
Getting apologies or getting hugs or getting love you.
I think Karen Majewski would agree with you as well.
And she's Jewish?
Wait, is it Karenski or Karen Majewski?
Karen Majewski. She sounds Roman Catholic.
Karenski?
Maybe Polish.
Yeah, most likely Polish Roman Catholic.
I just want to say, I've never really met any legitimate. How do I put this? I would say godly men that are Christian nationalists. I would say most of them are sleazebags, and they are. I would say just they're reactionaries at best. I don't think there's any really serious people that are Christian nationalists.
What does that even mean? They're not as serious as Pepe's violent threat level? What the fuck does this even mean? Fucking everybody here is a highly annoying person. It's got to be the truth. It's what's happening here. It's like, why are people coming back? It's because they're extremely annoyed with the highly annoying people on this app who just talk and say stupid shit and waste all their time. Jesus loves you too.
Actually comes from the European Enlightenment is an idea of tolerance. Jews won't by necessity, like, we're not part of other religions, we're not going to be around because there's not many of us. And I think it's a fundamental aspect of Judaism to respect other people, respect other faiths. And on the other hand, is it also an issue that we are now welcoming cultures into the West who want to use our values to destroy our values? So those are some of the contradictions. And then another person also said that they felt that Christian nationalism was like the Taliban. In other words, was inherently sort of intolerant, totalitarian. And there's some examples of people at all points along this spectrum, including Doug Wilson and Nick Fuentes.
Well, I think Doug Wilson's have very low opinions of. I believe he doesn't even. You can't even do it. It would be illegal to do the Eucharist or some shit. I don't know. I personally don't. I have a very view of non-Catholics. I don't. With the Orthodox being an exception, I very horrible view of these people. I can really give a shit what they have to say, but I would say I don't know that Christianity is necessarily tolerant. Going throughout history, I wouldn't say it was that tolerant. I think it's just like you said, through the Enlightenment, and even after the Revolution, our founders, they were obviously.
This is John Kitover, Chicago, Maryland, Canada. We're listening to highly annoying people, extremely annoying people who just talk. They have no purpose whatsoever. It's kind of like a weird hypnosis meditation that the group goes into. And it's basically like AA or NA, where the group comes together and they just say whatever is on top of mind.
I think
somebody might introduce a new topic. It just keeps rotating. Circular watermelon logic.
They don't really believe
Enjoy.
in freedom of religion. They don't really believe in pluralism. The true guiding force of the woke and the leftists in this room and on Clubhouse is hatred of white Christians, and the evidence that that's their motivation is
Dr. Peepee.
They push to have massive numbers of fundamentalist Muslims move to America. So think about it. All these leftists and progressives who live in Bushwick or San Francisco, they demand millions and millions of fundamentalist Muslims move here. Now it's interesting because obviously the fundamentalist Muslims do, ban gayness, and there's a whole bunch of they're anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-feminist, but yet the progressive community and the woke community wants massive numbers of Muslims. So I think that's prima facie evidence, Norm, that they're not anti-religion. They're anti-white Christian, and any group, no matter how many gays a group kills, no matter how many women are oppressed, the progressives want that group in America as long as they're sure that group will hurt white Christians more. And I'd ask you to ponder that.
Well, we call that, so people will call it the Green Alliance. People will call
We call that
a lot of different things.
Pepe the Resistance Fighter.
Like the circles I was in, it's just simply called Third Worldism. So
This is very much like Pepe's NAAA. When I was in those groups,
of the religions that are, I would say, hostile, and I'm speaking specifically of Islam, which I do not think we can live in peace with them. I really do.
But do you agree, Pepe, that the leaders of the feminist movement and the leaders of the gay movement demand mass Muslim immigration, even though they know the Muslims will kill them, right? Do you agree, or do you think that's an exaggeration?
I think Yeah, they have a loose alliance. Like we also see those coexist bumper stickers, which are just fucking laughable and naive. I do think that a lot of them do it out of spite for us. With the gays, that's a little hard. I don't map the gays on
Chicago, Maryland, Canada. We're listening to highly annoying
I think that's more.
extremely annoying.
Have a how people.
And I wouldn't slur the gay community in Europe as different. So, for example, people don't know this, but the leader of the anti-immigration party in Germany is actually a lesbian, and she increasingly in Europe, and I'm happy to hear criticism. I believe in Europe, gay people now realize that the Muslims will kill them. So gay people are increasingly voting for the nationalist parties like Alliance for Deutschland and Marine Le Pen. However, in America, the gay community has not realized that Muslims will kill them, and I believe the gays in America still vote for mass Muslim immigration, but I'm happy to hear criticism.
Yeah, queers for Palestine.
Yeah, I mean,
Have you heard of the dichotomy between European gays and American gays, Pepe, or do you think there is that nudity?
Well, I think that the issue is that Islam, we don't have to deal with much of the bullshit of Muslims here in the United States. In certain communities,
They're like 30% of the overall population, right?
Yeah, they'll be like maybe in Dearborn, Michigan, or something like that. But overall, they're such a small percentage of the population they can't fuck with anybody. In Europe, that's a whole different story. In many, they're everywhere, and so they would feel unsafe by these people, whereas homosexuals in the United States wouldn't. So I mean, that would be my explanation. Like, I personally don't fear Muslims in this country that much, I mean, I don't think we should be inviting them in, but I don't think that they're going to ever be able to. I get Zionists that will be like, oh, they're going to take over your country. You just wait and see. And it's like, nah, I really don't see how that's going to happen. But in Europe, it definitely could happen.
I would like you to go back to what you said about gay people wanting to take over and the minorities wanting to take over as some sort of dominance.
Yeah.
Yeah, explain that.
Oh, that's just how people are. When you get different communities from different countries, the people that they'll compete with. Majority, the ones that have, I guess you could say, the power, just basically because they're the majority, they'll seek to gain more influence to try to put themselves at the top of the pyramid to put them in a better position. It's not something that I think is inherent to foreigners. I think every group of people operates that way. But they, of course, they'll have I think they'll have a lot of political speech and propaganda guys as being promoting equality or a lot of these good virtues, when in reality it's just them, wanting to politically gain power.
I believe in Europe, gay people now realize that the Muslims will kill them, so gay people are increasingly voting for the nationalist parties like Alliance for Deutschland and Marine Le Pen. However,
admitted that the biggest threat to our national security is white nationalists, white supremacists, and people who, Proud Boys, all of that, all of the big assholes, who basically want to make this country, some sort of Eurocentric utopia, whatever.
Trad Catholics too.
Yeah, it's like I think that it's
David Bowie.
Go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
Yeah, what I want to do is like, there's this narrative that if minorities gain power, then all of a sudden they will, or gain equality, then all of a sudden they will push for power and dominance. And I feel like that is a complete falsehood. It's based on fear and irrationality. And it's really actually a bit of projection because really the people who have pushed for power is heterosexual
Interesting.
men, particularly, and historically, that's just what it is.
We're the status quo. I mean, that makes sense. If you're the majority, is great. The majority has been white, and the majority has been Christian. That is the status quo. That's just like going into Mexico. I expect the hierarchy to be Mexican because they're the status quo in Mexico.
But what you're glossing over is how they became the status quo. Because white people or European people of European descent are not the originators of what America was. A lot of people like to gloss over that fact.
Oh, we're not.
We're not. There were people.
No, I mean the original peoples came to the New World between 35 and 33,000 years ago.
Yeah, but I'm talking about America, the culture, the country, the system we have.
Oh, I thought we were talking about settlement.
No, I'm not talking about the land.
You're talking about the East Coast culture. Okay,
I'm talking about everything built on top of this land. Clearly, had that was because of the primarily Anglo founders that ended up in pioneers that came here. Nobody denies that part. That's why, despite Australia or New Zealand being so far away, our countries are nearly a spitting image of each other because the founding population was that similar, where they were basically the same fucking people, or the same culture, I should say. So, no, I think that, and I'm not an Anglo, but there's no denying they are the proprietors of the United States of America. Like, it's just...
They're the proprietors of the eastern part of the country, right? Like, when you get to modern America, it looks very Hispanic, very African American, very Anglo, right? Like, those three cultural, racial seem to kind of dominate. If you read, American Nations by Colin Woodard, you've heard me reference this before, Pepe, but it's just it's this idea that there are like 11 separate cultural nations, and the 11 separate cultural nations are promulgated on how we settle, right? So our area is called El Norte, right? And it's like it gains its culture from the ranching culture of northern Mexico, basically. Right, so like where you live, where I live,
Europeans as well. So I mean, it's just.
Well, yeah, I mean,
this idea that Europeans are the founders of this country, which is
I'm not saying the Europeans were not the progenitors in the East. I'm not saying that the Spanish were not the progenitors in the West. I'm saying, I think to Jay's point, the folks that we rolled over to build on top of, they were here 35 to 33,000 years ago. Those people got here through a combination of the Bering Land Strait, Polynesian settlement.
Yeah, I'm not. Land before Europeans arrived was different groups who hated each other, killing each other, and all the records show that the piece of land had one group of Indians and another group genocided them. Then a year later, another group. So the point is that the people, and this is my point, Marshall, the people that controlled the land on the day Europeans arrived, they were murderers that had stolen it from someone else, So, and the conceit of the progressive community and the conceit of the woke is that the group that had murdered and genocided their way into that land, because they're not white, they're legitimate, but the white people that arrived are illegitimate.
I don't know. I doubt that's what Jay meant.
No. And see, here's the thing that becomes I don't know. I'm in a good mood like right now, so you're getting different
Jay, you
actions.
sound like you're in a good mood.
Yeah, because normally that kind of a statement would justifiably warrant a different level of tone and reaction. But because I'm in a good mood, I'll break it down like this. First of all, you can't just sit, like cry. It's the yearning for victimhood that I can't take from certain people with those kinds of beliefs. When you literally have privilege like by birth, simply because of the nation that we live in and the history that we have, that is irrefutable. People, the difference is there was not just the you have a war, or people kill each other and then it just ends there and there's like peace. No, there's been systems in place to have a sort of caste system of people within this country from the very beginning. It's like look at all the wealth that has been stolen, the generations of wealth that has been disallowed from people, not here.
Through a combination of trade, policy, and settlement.
I'm not talking about dehumanizing that's why there's this sort of push for, well, everything is good now. What do you mean? We had a black president. What do you mean? Everybody can come here and look at my country. You cannot erase history. I know Trump is trying. That's why we
If you think you're going to it's not the point. Just let Jay finish, please. Like, he was in the middle of a statement. We all heard him talking.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Marshall. But it's like there's this, and again, it speaks to my point because I think it's very interesting, this sort of yearning to be able to only view the positive parts, and this yearning for sort of a pride in our history. We have a dark past. Yes, there's been great. It's a complex past.
Much better past than other countries, though.
But what you can't do if you're going to
hey Jay, you are going in and out, buddy.
And all this is only focused on the schools and the tragic, circumstances that people had to grow up in, suffer through, slavery, racism, all of that. You can't just gloss over that and then try to be like, oh well, now all these minorities, they just want to take power from us so that they can dominate. Like,
sure, I get what you're saying. I'd say it like this. Now, nearly every country, I think they're going to have a dark past. Even when it did
much darker than ours.
And sure, but we did end up becoming the most powerful empire on the history of this fucking planet. So I think there's going to be any group of people that are going to, I guess, if they should be proud, it's probably Americans, if we're just being honest. And even still,
I'm not your empire, fella.
I'm not your fella guy.
But we can.
I'm not your buddy, jackass.
oh my gosh.
We can you did touch upon it, and particularly the plight of African Americans. There are things that were obviously morally wrong. But I would say there's a little bit of a caveat. This is not my opinion. This is a fact. In every country where you have blacks as a minority, they are the de facto underclass. They are the de facto. They're the ones who don't do very well. You can give a million reasons why, but black people in particular do not get treated well anywhere, and they tend not to perform very well anywhere. Some of them do, but I do think there's other issues that and us ushering in a bunch of immigrants, whether it's Southern Asians, East Asians, Latinos, all of Latin America is pretty racist towards blacks. It does not improve your situation. In fact, the group of black people that have the best outcomes in comparison to any other blacks in the world are the ones from the United States. You can harp on the history, but then you can look at you're the most privileged black people in the world. I really don't. I think we should look at it through a different perspective.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some wealthy black people in France.
I would like to respond to, implicit in all those statements is the idea that, you stole the land from native peoples, therefore you don't have the right to complain because you're benefiting from the systematic oppression and racism and misogyny and patriarchy that happened in our past. So if other people are going to do that to you, you just got to sit and take it. No, we don't, because white Europeans came to this country and engaged with the native peoples who had done nothing with it for 10,000 years. You look at the technological achievement of Europe, that was brought to the United States. And so that's issue number one. Number two, I'm sorry if this offends people, but this country was built by white Western European males. It was not built by the African Americans. They did contribute some, but no, this country was not built on their backs. The contribution of African or black people during slavery was about 15 to 17% per year of the total GDP, period. So, yeah, we are going to complain, and we are not going to allow people who use these lefty talking points to tell us, you can't talk because your ancestors were bad, especially since everyone, be they native, be they black, be they immigrants, be they illegal immigrants, be they anything, benefit enormously from the accomplishments of Western white Europeans. So we would like all of those people to sit down, stop complaining, and say thank you to the white man for everything he has done for you.
You're goddamn right, brother. So you're saying that black people actually benefited from slavery, is what you said?
Yeah.
They benefited from
Where have I heard that before? Where have I heard that before?
Say they benefited.
You got that right, Alan.
I said they benefit from this country.
You gotta listen to Alan on this. He was actually here when the Mayflower landed.
That's right, and that means I'm old enough to be tired and have zero tolerance of liberal fucks who let a gay man kiss them just because they asked. But that's just me.
I mean, you would be homophobic if you didn't kiss them.
Wow. I really, it's the white victimization for me.
No,
literally.
If you get
No, Sammy, don't interrupt me. Because Alan, I'm going to need you exercise some restraint. Because I guess it triggers you when you come face to face with somebody who can actually tell you that you are not a victim, that you benefit from privileges
liberal
from not liberal bullshit. You have not built anything. You have not. How have you benefited this country?
Does everyone get to complain? Yes or no?
Yeah, not while I'm fucking talking, jackass.
Does
Mic the fuck up.
everybody get to complain?
Oh my
Yes.
god. You want to be a victim
Yes
so
or
bad.
no? This
Where's
is
my
a
little
white
violin?
man treating
Where's the
you
white
as
people
an
who live
equal.
in, which
This
I'm
is
sorry.
a white man treating you as an equal.
No,
I
no,
don't
no,
take
no, no, no,
bullshit.
no, no. It's
Yeah,
not an
this
equal.
is a white
It's
man
not an
treating
equal
you
at
as an
all.
equal.
No,
If
this is
you're
not
a
an
man,
equal.
you understand.
You want to be.
This one gets
You want.
equal.
You. No, 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 no. It's not about
Answer the
complaints.
question or
It's
shut
not
up.
about complaints. No, you can shut the fuck up. Don't fucking talk to me like that, bitch. Because you're the real this whole fucking room. Because you talking to a gay black man that will punch you in the face and then fuck you, bitch.
Well,
Don't
I
fucking
don't
talk to me like that.
He has to consent.
No, he doesn't have to consent. Fuck that. Because my ancestors didn't consent. So fuck that. Talking to me with that bullshit. Like you're talking to somebody who's educated and smart as fuck even before I was educated. Got skipped in fucking nursery school, and that's a fact. Don't come at me with no bullshit. I was keeping it cute.
Where did you get your
I
degree?
told you. That's irrelevant. But I have several degrees. You talking about college?
Yeah.
I have several.
I treat you like an equal, and who's the victim
No.
now?
It's not a victim. I'm not a victim. I'm somebody who's just checking your ass because you're ignorant and ill-informed.
You
No. You. Oh wait. Who are you?
Okay, in the room. Do we hear from Jay and then hear from Alan afterwards, or whoever was going to go next?
Yeah, that was how. Thank you for that, because that's what was going on that derailed the conversation in general. I was responding to the complete bullshit that Alan said, and I'm not going to be here in a room and be discussed, like I'm not in the fucking room, and have some jackass, probably white supremacist, talk about how actual history is up for interpretation. It's not up for interpretation, jackass. What happened, happened. And it's not like I'm sitting here crying about it. All I'm saying is that you can't erase what happened.
What
happened?
What happened?
Well, let's we open up some history books. We understand that people were slaves, that black people were enslaved for hundreds of years. We understand that the fucking White House was literally built by black people. We understand that black people have literally contributed to freaking advances in science, advances in fucking who invented the fucking hot comb? Invented peanut butter, invented fucking culture. Because guess what? When you're going to your basketball games, the what do you call it?
The Knicks.
The Knicks, and I'm not into basketball.
That's okay. We're not all perfect.
Fucking go look at that. We have culture, TV, like whatever. The history, doctors. Black people have been the blueprints. And listen, I'm not even like a black supremacist. I'm not even the issue that I was addressing with Pepe earlier. I think that there's a really insidious narrative about, and maybe just a misunderstanding or an irrational fear, or really a phobia of black people attaining power, because it's like, oh, well, our ancestors suppressed them and blah, blah, so they're going to just do the same thing when they get a chance. It's the same thing with misogyny. It's the same thing with gay people. It's the same thing. You're always worried about people who have been disenfranchised, especially for generations. Once they get, the power, they're going to abuse it. No. That's your playbook, not mine. I'm speaking to the ones who it applies to. People like that Alan jackass. Not all the white people there. I love white people. I love white men. Trust and believe. But what I'm not going to do is sit around and listen to people try to completely whitewash history and gloss over the reality and legitimacy of what happened and invalidate my actual ancestors' lived experience. Fuck out of here with that.
Okay, so Pepe, let me respond. Let's make it clear. He didn't like that I was invalidating his history, his people's history, his lived experience. So therefore, his response was to threaten me with violence and rape. That's his response? What was my response? I told him I was treating him as an adult male, and he didn't like it. Do we need people like JJ in our country? No. Let's hope that you somehow end up in jail so you're removed from the population.
Hey, I just walked in the middle of this. I don't care who started the fight, but the fight's ended. Just address the point. Don't address the topic.
I am addressing. He didn't like what I said, Marshall, so he threatened me with violence and rape.
And you threatened with murder, right?
He belongs.
I mean, if you guys both threaten each other, then it's a wash, and we can just address the subject.
I'm saying he needs to be removed from the population and put in jail.
Oh, the genocide?
I don't, again,
Yeah,
I just walked in the middle of this. I just need you guys to address the conversation, not each other. And he said to him, you said he threatened you, so now it's a wash, and let's just talk about the subject, because I just walked back in here.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. We're done.
Okay, we want to go next. So,
I just like the substance of what I said to be addressed because I feel like I made some pretty valid points and we're actually having a pretty productive conversation, and particularly like with what I was addressing, the kind of things that Pepe and some other people were saying.
Would you mind refreshing on that?
Yeah, so
You may have to repeat, but I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. No, so what I was just saying is that, basically there is just this narrative around, minorities attaining power and a sort of irrational fear of what can happen to like a slippery slope of, if we give them power, then, they're going to oppress us the way that our ancestors oppressed them, and they're just waiting to get in there. And
I've heard that. I live in an area that's 95% Hispanic, and I can count. Just give me a sec, Pepe. And I can count on like one hand the number of times somebody called me a cracker. Right? Sometimes they would call, like when I was growing up, they would call me güero. Right?
That's not even a mean word, though.
No. What I was gonna say was like I don't take güero or güerito to be like a mean thing. Like I never took it as a mean thing. My point is like I grew up in an area where minorities controlled the government and the levers of power, and like far from the minorities taking vengeance upon the Anglos that lived in the Rio Grande Valley, right? Like we've been treated with respect and decency. So I hear where you're coming from, JJ, because that seems to be when I get around large groups of white people and this conversation comes up, that tends to be the conversation. Oh, if we give them power, they'll oppress us the way we oppress them.
Mexico did it as a Texas.
I'm talking about other people I've talked to.
Yeah. Like, the white KKK guy that shops at Target and fucking rides a bicycle from like fucking Toys R Us in the 1980s.
Honestly, people I went to college with.
God damn it.
That's ridiculous. No one believes that in like any serious monochrome. Like on Clubhouse, that shit would raid. Like we have this whole like all these sides have these mysticisms about this shit, and it doesn't there. JJ, hate to tell you this, black people did not build the entirety of the White House. They contributed, yes, just like the whole country. You didn't fucking build the whole country. It wasn't built off the backs of black people. There was a great proportion that was significant that helped establish the country. But like this whole hyperbolic thing is there. White people are not afraid of being slaves. The Hebrew Israelites are not going. No one.
And then
And it was 15.
No one's going to give anyone hates kids. Nobody really hates kids that much. Well, I take that back. There are some people that hate fucking kids. But overall, like, that shit's on Clubhouse and it's just hyperbolic. If you're going to have a serious discussion, Marshall, there's no way in hell anybody's afraid. If we were, the fucking Hispanic people would be ruling us today.
So it was an
anecdotal perspective from like one interaction I had at one time.
So, Jay,
yeah, go on, Pepe.
so, regarding your, so look, it's not African Americans that are going to outnumber, and in my estimation, my personal opinion, they will never. First of all, they're too small of a population to even be dominant over us. But the people that are coming in are predominantly non-black people. Those are basically the people I was referring to. You have Indians, which I think are going to be very tribal. We can say that you're starting to see some issues with them kind of favoring each other in different industries, that kind of shit. But with black people, I think as we get more immigrants that are not white, I still don't in my personal opinion, it might even be worse for black people. I do not see you guys being elevated to any dominant positions in the United States. So black people are not my worry when I was talking about like the tribalism that you see between different groups.
Well, you had one that become president.
Yeah, but he's voted for by the majority, so.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused. How does a black person being president equate to like a dominance theory that first off, all black people, they're not unified. Like, no fucking way. Like, I mean, it's worse than Biggie and Tupac, or is it Biggie and Tupac? No, I don't know. Whatever fucking conflict was going on on that day. Like, yeah, like that shit, like, literally, where do black people that get modicums of successes and reach the upper middle class go to? They go into sections where they don't want to be around the poor. They don't go back and rebuild homes. They don't go back and rebuild infrastructure. They talk about it, but they never actually fucking do it. And to be honest with you, the poor in the one area, they don't want to talk to the other poor in the other area. So, like, this idea of a universal economic system that'll be prevailed upon by only black people is just more like fucking, I don't know. Like, get a better stroke. Like, I mean, even Hollywood isn't making a movie on this shit. So,
Jay, I'm curious if you agree with this. Is it a class thing more than a race thing, you think? There's that minority piece you were talking about, but there seems to be this class thing where people are like, well, I don't want to live around people that are poor, quote unquote. Right? Yes, that, like, takes into account minorities, but one of the critiques I have heard from friends of mine who are progressively left is not a racial critique, it's a class critique. I'm curious kind of what you think of the class critique.
Well, here's the thing. I think that that speaks to this, especially because, and maybe just because I listen, I think a lot of us probably who are pretty politically, and socially, like, aware. Well, some of us to different degrees than others. But I hear a lot of this narrative on the right about trying to separate those things as if they're not intertwined. You know what I mean?
They seem to be together.
Yeah, because, the reality is that we can't, generational wealth is a thing. Black people, Black Americans, were not afforded the ability to accumulate that to the same degree as their white counterparts, obviously, because of slavery and history, whatever. Jim Crow, so forth. So,
why do you mean Asians then?
Didn't they get their Asians in a role?
Asians did not have the same historical history that we have.
They were in internment camps.
It's worse. They got blown up. They were in tunnels, and the women were sexed.
No, it's not worse, and it was not.
It is worse.
No, it's not worse.
They were put in camps. What are you talking about?
This is why people have black fatigue.
They were putting.
It's not black fatigue. They weren't oppressed for 400 fucking years.
There's a difference.
No one's accounting for the difference, but to say the site that the Asians didn't have Jim Crow when literally the same states that had Jim Crow. So like they had, like, literally there's a reason, like, outside of the configurations, but California literally had an anti-Chinese, which they grouped up anti-Asian policies and legislation that existed for fucking until what, 1950-something? 60-something?
60-something, Brad.
Yeah, 60-something. So, I mean, like, it was, what, 1950 before they were able to even fucking marry a white woman?
Briefly, weren't even allowed to get an acting job in Hollywood in the fucking...
Even the Italians in New York, they had to separate themselves.
Fuck the Guidos.
No wasps allowed.
Yeah, fuck the Italians.
That's not nice.
They gave us pizza. That's the only claim they get.
I just don't understand.
They gave us pizza and Caesar.
It's like the Asians can be successful.
You mean Caesar dressing?
No, I mean Julius Caesar. Why would I be talking about Caesar dressing?
I think it's because of weak.
Because he brought up food. You guys are over talking people.
Asians have better fathers. Like, it's the weak black fathers is the problem. Not like history or something.
Well, that's kind of racist.
Wow.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, then I'm like,
It's not kind of racist.
you just gotta love the casual racism, you know, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
But when we go into
He's actually black, right?
there's a lot of black people on this app, and they definitely the biggest intra-community discussion is the two-parent household question, and then liking to talk trash about each other, the opposite sex within the black community as well. But that's not something that amongst black people that's probably going to be the number one. What they would attribute as being the number one cause for some of the poor outcomes in the black community. So I don't think that's necessarily racist. Whoever said that.
But again, this is the problem when we look at, and to me, it speaks to maybe just a lack of making very simple connections, or maybe a willingness or a desire to put, 1 and 1 together, 2 and 2 together. Why were black fathers out of the households? Because many of them were in prisons. Why weren't many of them?
No, not prior to. We were talking about the social expansion
I
programs.
thought it was the deindustrialization in particular, where a lot of people from the South, white and black, moved up to the Midwest, and they had jobs that could pay for a family, and those jobs went away, and a lot of hardships they ended up facing a lot of them, and then there's maybe some social policies that were not the best, like the only allowing the women to stay in Section 8 and so forth, that kind of shit.
But even expensive roles in my community, who's the over prevailing group that utilizes the most social safety nets? White people, in particular white women. So even then, if you're talking about who pushed the black men out of the community, no one told black men to up and leave their families. No black woman said, you know what, honey, I want to live on the government tit, and I don't need you to go get a job because I can just get this free money. You go away. I don't need you anymore. I mean, unless they were abusive or something like that, I'll give a carve out for that kind of shit. But really, a majority, black women weren't telling black fathers to get the hell out of the household in any kind of facet. That like myth didn't happen. Otherwise, we would have saw it amongst other groups like the Hispanics, the Asians, and white people. It would have been.
I'm gonna be total stick in the mud. Gary's room is starting, and Scott and I are going into Gary's room. Norm, if you'd like to follow us over, we can, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and shut her down. Since this is going, I kind of feel like I've got to keep track of those. I'm out walking and knocking on doors.
Yeah,
You'll stay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to go to Gary's room. I will see you guys later. Bye.
Enjoy.
But Jay, do you agree with that? Like, I mean, black women did definitely. There's no point in the history of this country where black women saying, "Get the fuck out of the household and stop helping me raise these kids."
Yeah, of course not. Like, so there's literally. First of all, we have to acknowledge just like logic, basic logic. Most problems have more than one. It's not just a simple, cause. There's multiple causes.
They're saying it takes two to tango.
No. I'm not talking about the dynamics between like the mother and father. I'm talking about the reason why black men, particularly, were removed from the household. This, and from my vantage point, and a lot of scholars who studied this is something that was that's why we talk about systemic racism, systemic oppression, because this is not just, something that just happened out of nowhere. So you can look, for example, to, like I was talking about, mass incarceration. Beginning in 1970, black men, there was the war on drugs, like, I don't know what it was, calls, black men were basically arrested at much higher rates than other groups, often for minor and non-violent offenses. So basically, obviously, what the father goes to jail, he's removed from the home, and there's a criminal record. So it's like a two-part thing.
Okay, so we can take that, but Jay, stop there for a second. What was the percentage of the black male population that occurred to in what given sect of time during the USA? Is that pre-1960 civil rights? Is that post the second civil rights or the first civil rights? Are you equating it throughout the entire history? Or are you citing this because the social advance programs didn't occur until much later past the second civil rights passage?
Right, the war on drugs is like the 1980s, right?
70s and 80s.
Okay, so if you're targeting the 70s and 80s, yes, I would agree. Black men were actually prosecuted and jailed at a much more higher rate than white people, but the overall percentage did not equate to the lineup. In fact, I think it actually equates to like what 5% of single black households that solely relied on a woman raising the kids alone and receiving government assistance. Those numbers don't equate, is what I'm saying. That doesn't matter.
The same law that would put a black man in jail also applies to white men too. I mean, it wasn't like black people only law.
Okay, that's
a whole different thread. I like it.
Because we can't be obtuse. Laws are only as good as the people who are willing to equally enforce them. Like a law doesn't mean shit unless you enforce it. It might as well just be just a random compilation of words. You know, like we just can't, because and that's what I think. When you see black people getting angry about this kind of stuff, it's because there's a persistent gaslighting that seems to happen. I'm not saying that that's the intention, but it's like, dude, these things have been studied. They have been passed down from personal accounts. Witnesses, people who live there, documented interviews, things, statistics, all of these things. We're not making this shit up, you know? And so it's not, and if anything, that's why it's so frustrating when we talk about black people, when they don't do as well. The fact that we do have black millionaires, black successful businesses. Look at Black Wall Street. That was attacked and everything by the people at that time. We have fucking black excellence on so many levels, despite the intended oppression and suppression of black people's civil rights.
But Jay, I get the talking points. Like I get the whole "I have a dream" speeches. Like I've heard it on Clubhouse for 5 years. I'd say a lot of people missed a lot of the Martin Luther King, and they should. And I think people should have paid more attention to Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King. And there were other greats at that time as well, Lewis, etc. You can go down the list. But what I would say is, though, when we look at the data, we can now with the historical lenses because it's been combed through, and because there's a lot of hyperbolic or really reaching on this. Again, when we look at the raw data, like I could cite a period of time from the 1920s to the 1940s, where white men were the actual largest group per capita, percentile-wise, etc. All the way, the numbers indicate they left their homes much more frequently than other ones. And they did that despite receiving government assistance, mostly due to economic collapses, Great Depression, the Midwest, what do they call it, Dust Bowl, that shit. They absolutely left and abandoned their families because they were just waterfalls. But overall, like we can say that the inclinations are more along the lines of, hey, no one actually pushed that narrative. And it always comes back when we look at it, and we've heard this from a variety of well-known black women leaders in the community who say, no, this didn't occur that way. It occurred because this was a choice. Well, I wouldn't count her as an expert. But I would say that these various leaders would often cite that, hey, yes, it's a nice coverall, but it doesn't actually equate to the problem, and the stats don't back up that narrative.
Let me ask you, what's the number one cause of divorce in most marriages?
Infidelity.
Irreconcilable differences.
That's not true. That's not true. No, not legally. What are those?
The legal thing is, well, I would say it could vary from like economics. It could.
Stop there.
But let me stop you there. Because of the choices that are allowed on those, 99% of the time, the economic disputes are just irreconcilable differences. It's not like, hey, you have a plethora of women betting me the diamond ring and the Mercedes, and since you can't do it, I'm leaving. Like, I don't believe anywhere that stat exists that can prove that. But at the same time, I think the arguments over money or financial constraints throughout the course of the life and our inability to resolve those matters and to overcome them as groups in between is really, really highlighting. And it does it particularly weigh on women, because we can see this in lesbian studies where they have very, very high propensities to have irreconcilable differences, including economics and abusive relationships. Do you not agree?
No, right. But see, what I'm trying to say is that what we can't do is look at, when you look at one study, when you're looking at certain things, and you're looking at them as if there are certain groups. You're looking at them as if they have parallel experiences. And to some degree, like, certain factors are similar, but you can't negate, or just try to, just try to narrow it down on like one particular variable. There are many different things that were happening simultaneously, right? So obviously, that's the thing. Obviously, it's not just the massacre. Why men left is mass incarceration, is economic hardship, is a legacy of slavery.
Mass incarceration.
Is also hold on, huh?
It wouldn't be mass incarceration, because even as I pull up the stats,
not by itself. No, but that's what I'm trying to.
But the mass incarceration,
it's not.
It shows that the majority of those crimes didn't come from the majority of family homes. Like, the mass incarceration you're looking for actually occurred with single men. Now, they may have had children with various other aspects, and I can grant you that. But the overall solidified home of a family, that number is not warranted in the crime stats. It shows different.
No, you're right. But that's what I'm saying, though. The reason why people make choices for reasons, right? These things just don't happen in a vacuum. There's nothing inherent. And I think January 6th taught us that, because there's this narrative about black people being more violent. Absolutely not. Not the ones who were beating up cops on January 6th. That was white men. So it's like there are many different factors as to why black men particularly could not be patriarchs in their family, like to a successful degree. First and foremost, back then in those days, like, you had to deal with racism, you had to deal with economic struggles, you had to deal with, what are the ways that you actually build wealth, right? Most ways that you, a couple easiest ways that you build wealth are by owning land, owning property, and starting having your own business.
Let's stop there. Let's stop there for a moment. So, there's a multitude of aspects you're attacking and stacking up. So let's go through. There were 5 homestead acts that occurred within this country during that time frame. And if you actually start to really go down, and the last Homestead Act claim was 1989 for a guy in 87. I'm sorry, I lied. 87. It was 30 acres in Alaska. He got it. He's a Vietnam War vet. And no, it was 30 acres he claimed in Alaska, and he was the last petition to file it. And the reason they closed the program is because no one filed for it. It was absolutely done. But when we look at the homestead grants that were actually granted, do you know that the vast majority of those, including for white people, the only one who actually did really well was actually Hispanic people, oddly enough. The overwhelming, by second generation, those land grants were gone because 90% of them were abandoned. Like the kids didn't want it. They sold it off. They sold it to conglomerates, multiple bigger areas, or they allowed the state because they didn't want to pay the estate tax or the taxes due on the property because of various reasons. There's also, some other environmental disasters that occurred, like the Dust Bowl. These areas that occurred and having this just shows that those grants, despite the parents raising their family, living on the land, they chose economic opportunities more closest to urban areas, which is why those land grants actually failed. And that Homestead Act overall generally were a good idea, I guess, if you were going to do an expansionist kind of viewpoint. But overall, the ones that maintained it, including black populations, the kids, like even white kids, they just didn't want to fucking do this work anymore. They didn't want to be farmers. They left. And we see this recurring theme. But again, the Hispanics, they held on to it. And so did the Asians up until like World War II. Then when the government went ahead and seized them up in internment camps, then, basically a lot of them lost those opportunities. They started to evolve into more different areas.
Well, I listen. I have to leave. I feel like there's a lot there. I think we can have a more interesting conversation about this. But I kind of just want to leave you with this kind of general idea, which is that when you try to not you personally, but when there is this conversation surrounding these other groups seem to have figured it out. Why can't black people, just do what they did? It's that's where you lose, literally, every black person ever, because we're not gonna sit here and act like there weren't, especially black Americans, right? Because actually, people who come from, Africa or Europe, black Europeans and different parts of the world, they don't have the same kind of generational trauma that we have, in addition to all the other things that we mentioned before, in addition to the history, in addition to the fact of there's been so many studies for literally people hiring, companies hiring certain people because, we want a certain image, we want a certain look, we want a certain number of white faces in our thing because that's what's going to sell. How many Black Panther? They didn't want to. That took so many years to make because they didn't think an all black superhero movie would sell. Prove them the fuck wrong. It's like there's been so many different.
Spawn was a better one, but
yeah, but so that's my thing. I think that listen. I'm somebody who, you're talking to an educated, smart as a whip motherfucker from Queens, New York, Queens' finest, New York's finest.
No, Jay, I like you. I'm not discounting it. I'm not trying to.
No, not me. I'm just saying. I'm not because it's there's a narrative about everybody just wants to be a victim. No. It's just about let's just acknowledge what happened and be a little bit more nuanced in our evaluation, especially.
That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking too. Is don't give me the gloss over. I get the MLK thing, and I use that as a tongue in cheek. I get the whole because there's a lot of people that rip him off out of context and apply it to absolutely everything and use that as a crux. But when I go through and I look at the policies, or I look at, all right, who did what under which areas, when I go through those historical records and even reading the Times, your argument there is here. The generations didn't do it, but yet the people that came out of that greed, even still suffering in the Jim Crow era, that actually started to build generational wealth through land acquisitions, through financial means, and had that. Yes, they faced racism. Yes, they faced. I give you all of that. But those groups still succeeded until their generation came out who said, "Screw this! I'm taking the money and running." And that was it. And it didn't just occur in black communities. Maybe because black people are a minority that it gets hyper focused on, but it happened in the vast majority of white communities too. So when we look at these two demographics side by side, you see very similar slopes of like removal from opportunities for generational wealth, despite their families actually providing that narrative and facing those. And so when I look at that and I hear, oh well, it was because of racism. Yes, but there was the pathway. Yes, I'll give you like the GI Bill. I'll give you trades and patent marks. I get that. The 75,000 patents that existed, that definitely would have brought wealth to Black people. I give you all of that, including the artwork, some of the script.
Internet, without knowing where they're going on the internet, what they're seeing, how it's affecting the developing minds, I agree. That's a serious problem. So, should we support a social ban for children, or should we say it's mom and dad's responsibility, not the government's? We don't need a nanny government. I'm going to start opening it up to folks on the stage to speak in the order in which I see them. Alan, are you interested in commenting on this one? If Alan doesn't answer, folks, for those who don't know, he is running a small retail business, and he's probably with a customer. And so, actually, when Alan cannot come to the microphone, I'm happy, believe it or not, because it means he's hopefully making moolah shmoolah, and that's important, because we don't want to just, you know, as much as I want people to be involved in what we're doing, taking care of business comes first, right? So we'll go to Scott, followed by Marshall.
Yeah, okay. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't have a ton to say other than, I mean, you know, of course, the number one advocate for this policy of social, you know, for people that are marginalized communities, the LGBTQ+, other groups, on the spectrum, and very helpful. You know, that also, how will you enforce it? It's going to create this filter system, kids with it, without it. So, I don't know, Gary. I think that this is worth public debate. It's worth a lot of public debate. And I think that the answer will probably not be simple. We've debated what it is, and I don't think. I mean, I'm generally, I mean, prohibition is it one instrument. And maybe that's what we need. Like, just with one instrument.
So how do we do that? How do we protect the children, but do it in a way where you don't take away their ability to use social media for positive reasons? The nuance to which you refer. How do you do that?
I don't know, Gary. This is the problem. Jonathan, for those who are interested in the topic, I mean, Google hates stuff, you know, and also you'll come up with people. I came up with an article today from a woman in the Guardian. This is a little dated because it's a year and a half old or something. But yeah, this is the book is Kate's book is and the title of this is I'm an expert on adolescence. Here's why a smartphone ban isn't the answer. What we should do instead is show a person more parental interaction, or sort of, and some of the stuff you said, more technological awareness at an early age. So I mean, this is one of the things that requires robust debate. So I mean, I'm tempted to kind of weigh in on one side or the other, but I don't know the answer. I do know that further vigorous conversation.
You know, it occurs to me, Scott, that even the most mundane, unobtrusive approaches to this become controversial. So, for example, we have seen on the local level, and this is something that can be easily done and doesn't affect the social media platforms themselves, saying that the children cannot use or bring phones into the classroom because it's distracting. And I don't think that's such an onerous thing for a school district or a school to impose upon the children. But then you get pushback from parents who say, well, what if there's an emergency?
What if there's an emergency? And I'm thinking, when I hear this, how the hell did I survive 12 years of education? Well, actually 13 if you include kindergarten, if you want to consider that, without a cell phone. What did I do if there was an emergency? What did my parents do if there was an emergency? How did we manage? But even something as unobtrusive as that gets pushback. Now, you expect a pushback from the children, but what I find kind of astounding, Scott, is a pushback from the parents.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, I mean, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that there's, people, and again, this woman who wrote this article, this American, she talks about her own kids and the reasons why she doesn't support the man as an adolescent psychologist. I know, I think it's complicated there. It's complicated. I'm Mr. Gray today.
I agree, it's complicated. Marshall, followed by Daniel.
Oh, Scott, I don't really know the answer. I do think that you ought to introduce tech gradually.
Okay, your argument is the
Gary Baumgarten.
responsible argument.
Yes, parents are absolutely responsible. If they let their kids mess around with devices and they don't pay attention to what their kids are doing, they're responsible for everything they get.
So you would be opposed to this legislation, the nanny legislation, as you might call it? I'm putting the words in your mouth.
I'm not so sure I would be opposed to it, but I'm certainly opposed to the idea. I'm certainly opposed to big government in general. But the idea of keeping kids off computers, I think, should be a parental thing. I don't think it should be a government thing.
But of course,
so I'm not opposed to the legislation in part, but I am opposed to this idea that parents can't parent their children, that they need the nanny state to do it.
Right. So the problem, of course, is that's great for Marshall's household. And that's great for my next door neighbor, who I used as an example, their household. You guys know that we're talking about you over here? But what about all the other families that, they don't have these strong parental skills? Shouldn't the government step in, or should we allow things to continue to run amok and say, well, that's on the parent?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that.
I don't think the government has a good answer for that either, Marshall. Remember what Reagan said about the man from the government coming to your front door? Daniel, followed by Amir.
The prodigal son has returned. Thank you for having me on the stage, Gary. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm just in headphones.
No, I don't hear you at all. Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, good. All right. I mean, what it comes down to is, what does the word freedom mean to you? I mean, is freedom just about, I can have my kid on social media all day. I can do whatever I want. This is a free country. Blah, 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 blah. We have no responsibility for anyone else within our community. I think my kids have the freedom to potentially get groomed, lose their attention span to content, have higher rates of depression, become socially stupid. One great example is in France, the beautiful country of France. They have to teach empathy classes for the toddlers. The toddlers are stunted because they're all stupid-ass iPad kids. They don't know how to function. They're on the internet, and the internet curates the world to what you want. Mental health will be fixed all from the fucking internet. Let's plug this bad boy. Experiment fucking over. And when Marshall says, isn't like the government doing that? That's fine. We can do a peaceful grassroots movement and destroy this machine. Thank you.
Well, I think it's going to be hard for you and I to go out there and pull the plug on the internet. It sounds like a great concept, maybe, except for the fact that it would kill this forum. And what would we do, ladies and gentlemen? What would we do without the critical thinking?
We all come to your home, get.
Yeah, we meet up at bars and places in person and be able to smell and touch each other again.
It's a great concept, but you don't believe it's going to ever happen or could happen.
No, I don't think it will. I think it's going to, centuries from now, it will be the death knell of all humanity. But, what can you fucking do? It's just like the nuclear bomb, bad idea, but you can't do shit about it.
I saw a headline today, and I will acknowledge that I did not read the story, but I think it's apropos to your point. And the headline said, humans used to control machines, not so much any longer, or something like that. So there's something to be said for that as well. And as Larry, my good friend Larry down there in the audience said to me in a text just before we started this, well, what about banning it for adults? And, maybe he has a point, and you seem to be articulating his point pretty well there, Dan. Thank you, and welcome back. Amir, follow.
To sort of in a sort of more critical way and become capable digital citizens, basically. I think education is probably a big part of the answer here, rather than sort of limiting or banning, which I sort of philosophically disagree with, in all accounts. But just as everybody else is free, governments are also free to introduce curriculum into the schools at a very early age. In the UK, if I'm not mistaken, there is something called the Essential Digital Skill Framework. There is an equivalent of that under EU as well, and these are very good techniques to sort of create little workshops for students. They're not well established, I must say. Some schools doing that, especially private schools, but it's not a very established. But it's definitely some steps are being taken towards that, and I think ultimately that's where we're going to end up, because it's definitely necessary. Things like this quick YouTube that you mentioned, or TikTok. There are many studies now that they've proved them to be extremely detrimental to mentally, just because by flipping through, you're actually training your mind not to concentrate, and you lose this lack of concentration, which you're going to need for just about anything that you want to do seriously in life, whether it's education or your work. So this kind of trains your mind away from that, and these things need to be sort of highlighted. And the best way you can do that is to do it at an early age in a classroom, create little groups like a workshop, ask the students themselves to actually do research online in front of the computers in the classroom, find out what the actual issues are, and the best way is to actually educate them. I think education. That's one of the prime ministers here a long time ago said. I forget who he was, but I think that is probably one of the best solutions to this very, very important problem.
Thank you for that, Amir. So as you spoke, I did a little further research. According to CBS News, approximately 24% of suicide deaths among children ages 10 to 19 are linked to high-risk digital technology and internet use, such as cyberbullying, algorithmic exposure to harmful content, or addiction. The CDC has published findings linking frequent daily social media use to significantly higher rates of persistent feelings of hopelessness, severe online bullying, and suicide ideation among high school students. A Journal of the American
JAMA network, a Journal of the American Medical Association network study. It's a long-term study which tracked kids from the ages of 9 to 14. I'm reading this on the NPR site. It found that children who develop addictions to social media or mobile phones are significantly more likely to report suicidal thoughts and behaviors. One last one from the National Institutes of Health. An analysis of 9 international studies by the National Institutes of Health finds a clear independent association between heavy social media / internet use and increased suicide attempts in young people. These are very chilling results that are being reported by these various credible institutions. Thank you, Amir.
Can I add one?
Yes, Amir.
One other thing, Gary, and that is limitation. Obviously, is important. I mean, I talked about we talked about sort of banning, but you can avoid banning, but you can basically limit. I totally agree with what Marshall said about not having the mobile. This is exactly what we did with our son. He could have it, just basically he could have his console, his mobile phone, his gaming, everything he wanted to do. It had to be in the playroom, and that would be right next to us where we were sitting, so we could see what he's doing. And he was never allowed to take the mobile phone or the console into his bedroom. When he went to the bedroom, it was basically books or read the books or just go to sleep. That's it. So that limitation is very different to banning. And one other comment about the addiction. Addiction is not just about children, as I think you mentioned already. I got involved with a game that my son was playing. It's Clash of Clans. I think some people may know that. And this was about 10 years ago, maybe. Now, I just went in there anonymously because I just wanted to make sure that nothing is happening there, like grooming or anything like that. And of course, a few years later, he left the clan, and I'm still in there. I must say I have a pretty decent war base, though, but it just goes to show that addiction is not just for children. You can actually get hooked on it too.
Thank you, Amir. My recommendation is don't allow yourself to be addicted to anything else on the internet except for the Critical Thinking Forum. Jules, followed by...
How you doing, guys? I'm going to start off just agreeing with Marshall. Let parents be parents, and that's whose hands it should go into. But when you said supporting social media ban for children, to me, I thought you would say a social media ban for adults or elderly adults. Who are the most financially scammed people in the world? I think it's elderly people. You want to draw the line elderly at 60, 55, whatever. People new to the internet who don't have the skills that younger kids have. Financially, they're getting ripped off left and right. Children get ripped off too, but the point I guess trying to make, Gary, is that children have to develop with social skills with other children. They just go in their room, play on the computer, and go into social media. You're not meeting people. It's just very harmful. Everybody covered that who spoke before me. It's addictive. It's harmful. Suicidal. It destroys you. I know in New York here, you have my New York accent, so you know I'm from New York. The education system is so piss poor. There's really no education system. People don't read at the correct reading level. They don't know how to do math. They don't have any skills for history. They don't understand anything. They can't reason. They can't think. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying most. It's at epidemic level. It's really bad. So I would say, we come on, let's admit, we all predicted when social media came out that it was going to be bad, and bad for children, bad for the elderly, bad for financially, susceptible people. My last thing, I'm going to close down by saying, I don't think that enough has been done to get the scammers, not only on social media, on all these other sites, except for Gary's Critical Thinking Forum, but also you get the scammers on telephone calls every day. I get at least 5 scams a day. I get called for insurance for cars I don't have or I never owned. I get fake calls from my child who was arrested because he was in a car accident, and it wasn't him, of course. I mean, repeatedly, they want money from me. That's what's going on too, and they're trying to get it from the children also. But the children are hurt in every way, and I'll land with that. They're hurt in every way. We're hurt in the scamming way. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, there's a television news anchor that just went public with how she got scammed, and she says she's embarrassed by it because she feels that as a journalist, she owes it to her audience to give them to tell them how easy it is to get scammed. So anybody can get scammed for sure.
What kind of scam was it?
I didn't get into the details of the story.
Yeah, I had friends too. 10, 15, 20,000 gone. I mean, come on, smart people. It's just gut.
We do stories occasionally, Jules, about retired police detectives of all a target group who have been scammed. Yeah, they're very slick. These people, they're very slick. And just imagine how much more difficult it is for these children. And somebody, Amir mentioned, which wasn't even part of this discussion, and probably should have been, and I was remiss for not raising it, the grooming of children on the internet. By giving your children free rein to all of this, you expose them to potential groomers. I was, as I mentioned before, Alan was there with me. I was an administrator for another program. It's the grandfather of programs such as this one on Clubhouse. It was the first voice, video, and text chat program on the internet. And we wanted to protect the underage, the children. So we created a teen section where only teenagers were allowed to go in. And we put admins in there, moderators in there, we call them admins, to ensure that, they weren't being approached by predators. And we learned that, and this goes back to our initial discussion of good intentions, unintended consequences, that by putting the youngsters in one form in order to protect them, it attracted the pedophiles. And they were in greater danger as a result of our efforts to put them in less danger. So what appeared on the surface to be a good faith effort to protect children actually backfired and put them at great risk. And I learned this firsthand when my daughter, then in junior high school, wanted to go on the program because this is where Daddy was working. So I said, you can go on the program, but only with me by your side. So she created a nickname, Schoolgirl with some number after it. And immediately, these adult males were hitting on her. I said, okay, well, this experiment failed. You're off the program.
So I took over her account, and as an administrator, I had the ability to do this. Every adult who approached me, this was like To Catch a Predator, I would ban them from the program. And it was like a full-time job. I'm not kidding you. How many other children were being approached in such a manner? It's really a very, very, very dangerous world out there on the World Wide Web, as we used to call it. Thank you, Jules, for your contribution.
And thank you for that story. I'm shaking my head, Gary. Unbelievable. Keep up the good work, buddy.
Well, fortunately, I don't have that problem here on Clubhouse, but it was a major problem over there. And it wasn't the fault of the platform. They were just, it was just people will find ways. And social media, the internet, opens the door to those ways. Thank you, Jules. We'll go to Brian, followed by Daryl.
Yeah, just a couple things. The first one being that I definitely agree there's a problem, but I don't know that a full social media ban is a good idea, because there's a lot of good sites out there too. Goodreads is one of them, to allow kids to get textbooks access and things like that to some areas that wouldn't normally easily get access to them. So I think that they need to go after the companies and hold the companies responsible to making sure that they're making their sites safe and protecting people. And then I also think that when they do catch people, they need to give out harsher punishments. I don't think the punishments have been harsh enough for the time. The example you just gave, like, when they've gotten past people and gotten to children, they need to get serious time.
Yeah, and I am not certain what all the impediments to all this is. Part of the problem is this. So the victim is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but the perpetrator is in, I'm not going to mention another country, but it could be another country, even complicating it. But the perpetrator is in Louisiana. Whose jurisdiction does this crime occur in? The victim is in one state, but the perpetrator is in another. This is across state lines, and I guess you could say this is a federal case, but we know that our federal agents are very busy with other issues right now, and they're not, I don't think they have the ability to be attentive to that problem. So I think that's why a lot of these cases go unresolved. I think the To Catch a Predator approach, which of course Chris Hansen, who I, by the way, know pretty well because we worked together in Detroit. But Chris, what he's doing, well, that's being replicated by various law enforcement agencies. So if it's a person who takes it to the point of wanting to meet the child, then you can localize the jurisdiction. And they absolutely have the right to make an arrest under those circumstances, even if the initial contact was made elsewhere. So I'm thinking of a case that I covered where the undercover officer posing as a child was in Wayne County, Michigan, and the perpetrator was in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And the perpetrator offered to come across the border to meet the child. So the perpetrator came across the border and purchased a motel room in Taylor, Michigan, and they nabbed him, even though there was not a victim. There was no victim in this crime. There was an intent, but there was no victim because he was talking to an adult human being. He was not talking to a child, but he thought he was talking to a child. The law allows, believe it or not, for there to be, because of the intent, a prosecution. So they nabbed him actually in the parking lot of this motel. They've opened up his glove box and they found condoms in the glove box, which in their mind and the prosecutor's mind showed intent, and they successfully prosecuted this guy. So under those circumstances, the question of jurisdiction isn't so much of an issue. If it's trading in graphic material across state or international boundaries, it becomes a much more difficult situation. It's hard. I know from my experience as an administrator on that program, Brian, if we detected somebody in one state or one country
to pay the extra money, and if I'm correct, don't hold me to this number, but I think social media revenue last year was like over 260 billion. I feel like a percentage of that could go to what you're talking about. Take those resources and create something that can help monitor some of it. Maybe not all of it, but catch some of it. But that's all I was going to say.
Brian, if you want to recommend that particular product, as you I think know, the link to the chat is above. Maybe if you don't mind, you can post that for folks who might want to look into it.
I'll find it on my phone now.
That'd be great. Thank you, Brian. Daryl, followed by Jake.
Hey, Gary. So, how much of this is like this one-size-fits-all solution, right? So it's, how much faith do we put in the government? And going back to something that both Scott and Marshall said, are we kind of declaring that parents can't parent, and therefore, like you mentioned, the nanny state? Yeah, it's also this outrage. Video games are causing violence. Sometimes when there would be these incidents in schools, they were actually trying to look into whether some of these young boys were playing games like Call of Duty or Battlefield or some of these things that ultimately, over a period of time, it's been shown that there's no real link between, violence in video games and actual violence in society. Now, they did say that some of these games might lead to quote-unquote aggressive thoughts, but, no actual correlation to taking violence off the screen. And isn't some of this, shouldn't parents, let me rephrase that, shouldn't parents know their kids, in a sense? Shouldn't parents, if you have two kids, be able to, maybe by the time they reach 9 or 10, or, be able to say, hey, maybe he's okay with the video games, but he's not. He shouldn't be, meaning like maybe he would be okay with social media, but he wouldn't. Or she would be okay with social media, but he wouldn't. Are we saying, as a collective group, like as a society, that, people can have kids, but people aren't capable of actually raising kids to be productive adults? Or people aren't, you brought up the example of how, parents would put their kids in front of the television as they were doing other things in the house. Is it that this is the new way of doing this same thing? In a sense, I saw a funny meme the other day, and it said, I had kids just to drive them to activities. And I thought it was sarcasm, and a buddy of mine, he pointed out to me, and he said, well, no, it's because parenting isn't really about parenting. It's just about activities. It's softball. Here where I am, there's a Taekwondo studio. And right after school, there's like 100 kids coming down the block with their Taekwondo uniforms on. and they're doing taekwondo right after school till about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So it's where do parents come in, and parenting comes into play is what I would ask.
Look at your comment about possibly some of this is alarmist. What say you to the statistics that I previously read off from the various credible organizations who have studied this, who do find causation?
So I think we haven't had enough time to analyze enough data. Now, I'm not saying that it's untrue. I'm more saying, have we studied this enough to definitively say that it is absolutely true? And what is the solution? Is the solution to tell parents or ban these things? How many, like you ban this, right? How many parents are going to acquiesce and then do the login for the kid and then hand the device back to the kid anyway? It's I don't think these things create actual obstacles to what we're saying we're trying to prevent, because I do think there are a lot of parents who will move past that ban or move past this block and hand the device back to the kid. So I don't disagree with what the study is saying. I'm saying, have we actually studied it long enough to kind of definitively say that this is true or not true?
I will point out that one of the studies that I quoted, they say it's a long-term study. Now, I don't know what long-term means and whether it satisfies your questions. I think, at least anecdotally, we can say there are suicides. A lot of them are by teenagers, are linked to cyberbullying. And I don't think we should be ignorant of that. And I think that any primary or secondary educator who might be listening or participating in this forum would probably, based on their experiences, second that emotion, as the saying goes.
So again, I'm not even saying I disagree with you, but I'm saying, where does parenting come into this, in a sense, right?
But Daryl, if you allow your child, and maybe, you're saying that when, Billy and Janie go to school, they should not be allowed to take their phones with them, or they're not allowed to have smartphones, they have to have flip phones, which, by the way, sometimes results in a degree of bullying in real life as well. But at any rate, is that what you're recommending the parents do?
Well, no. Because
if you allow them to have an iPhone, and at what age do you allow it? Because we're talking about high school students who are committing suicide. So you're going to say that a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 15-year-old is still too young to have an iPhone? How do you protect your child? Are you going to say, I screwed up as a parent because I allowed my 15-year-old to have an iPhone finally? I don't know if it's as easy a proposition as you suggest. Again, that's an anomaly what's going on next door to me. Those kids, none of them have phones. And I've discussed the parenting. We just have chats, the mother and the father and I, and I fully understand their approach. I mean, they're homeschooling their children, which also helps reduce the bullying aspects. Some people will say, well, but what about the social interaction that they are losing? These kids get a lot of social interaction after school, by the way. They're very popular, and all the kids in the neighborhood are in front of their house wanting to hang out with these kids. So, but at any rate, but there are outliers. You know, most children the age of their children I know have smartphones.
But is it bad to, you know, so my niece is 16, you know, she goes to a small all-girls school up in Connecticut. They check their phones in when they go into the school. They get their phones back at lunch. When lunch is over, they have to check their phones back in. They're put in a little locker, and they get their phones back at the end of the day, right? So it's there are some systems that seem to be trying to figure out a way to do this, is what I'm saying. And I don't think being an outlier is a bad thing necessarily, is all I'm trying to say. I'm not arguing.
I agree, and as I said earlier, that strategy by schools, I think, is at the minimum what can be done, and very prudent. Thank you, Daryl. You know, if I have an emergency and I need to get a hold of my kid, I call the office, and the office goes to the classroom.
To the classroom, yes.
Holds the kid out. If the kid has an emergency, they're going to call me. The child does not need in the classroom a phone. You're absolutely right. The parents who come up with that argumentation, what are they thinking? I don't understand that thought process. I applaud that school in Connecticut, Daryl. Gene, followed by Mickey.
Hi, Gary. Hi, everybody. I don't really have a very smart answer. I just have to be sort of reflective, and I agree. Many of the people were talking about this issue. There's no one method will fit all, but I believe parent has responsibilities. Parent needs to be educated. Parents need to set example, not use their iPhone, their smartphone all the time. And when I go to dinner with some people, even 2 people or 3 people, small group, still somebody is looking at their phone quite often. It really bothers me. Yeah. So I think adults has to. It's like it. I'm so glad you talk about this subject because it's not talked enough. I don't think about that because my child is already big enough, and for when he was in college, he has to do a competition, and then he told me himself. He said, "Mom, I turned off my social media for entire 1 month. I didn't touch it, and guess what? He won. He won the first prize in Juilliard viola competition, you know. So that is something I didn't ask him to do, but I'm just thinking from younger time, if you have kids 5, you need to control yourself. You as parents, you need to control yourselves. You need to set example. If the parents are not aware of this problem, and it's very hard to navigate. And then of course in New York right now, you have to go into school, put your phone into a cubby or somewhere, and then get it after the school. That's great. Now, another thing is, I think we're sitting on our ass too much looking at the phone. We need to encourage our kids to do, like, I don't know the statistics, okay? They need to go play soccer. They need to go play tennis. They need to go whatever. Play the violin, you know, they need to stand up to play. So I think we're not... I would encourage our, younger generation to do physical exercise. In that sense, you're not going to holding the phone and, doing social media and being bullied or whatever, feeling stressed out or depressed or whatever. But, in the other hand, like other people talk about, internet has, we get information so quickly, we learn things. It's not everything is bad, right? I watch YouTube a lot, to learn stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, so my suggestion is we parents needs to be more responsible. And of course, A lot of people here are not parents, but think about it. If you become a parent, or if your uncle, if your aunt, what do? You know, and minimize using the device. Yeah. Thank you.
So you bring up a point that has not been mentioned previously, and it's an excellent one, Ching, and that is that we as the adults should be leading by example. And as you know, I drive a conversion van, and I learned, one of the first things I learned when I first started driving the van was you can look into the cars that pass you. Usually they're passing me. I'm not passing them because you can't drive like Mario Andretti when you're driving a van. And so many people, while they're driving, are texting. Forget about talking on the phone. They're texting. You mean whatever's on that phone, it could not wait until you're at a safe location to text? So how can we expect our children to do better when they see moms and pops doing this? I've got some breaking news, and I don't offer it to change the topic only because I want to keep everybody informed of important developments no matter what we're discussing. Reuters just moved a story. Thank you, Larry, for bringing it to my attention, that the U.S. military has launched strikes against Iran. You know that yesterday, or this past overnight, depending on what time zone you're in, the Iranians attacked a Qatari-flagged ship carrying, I believe, liquid petroleum through the Strait of Hormuz, hugging the coast of Oman, and set it ablaze. Hit it on the port side. So here's the Reuters bulletin. The U.S. military has launched a series of strikes against Iran, U.S. Central Command said Tuesday, adding that the strikes were in response to what it said were Iranian attacks on 3 commercial vessels that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Quote, U.S. Central Command forces have begun launching a series of powerful strikes against Iran to oppose heavy costs for targeting and attacking commercial shipping, a U.S. military statement said. Continuing the quote, Iran's demonstrated aggression was unwarranted, dangerous, and a clear violation of the ceasefire, it added. It was unclear what specifically the U.S. targeted, but Iranian media said 6 projectiles hit the area of, Alan will correct me if I'm mispronouncing this, Tarui Pier in Sirak in southern Iran. I apologize again if I mispronounced that. This marks the first known U.S. military strikes against Iran since late last month, when there were several days of strikes and counterstrikes between the two. So there's that very important bulletin. Ching, great points to be made. We should be leading by example. Mickey, followed by David.
Gary, there's some news relevant to you that I'll say briefly, which is don't go to 42nd and 3rd because the Pfizer building is in danger of collapse.
So let me bring folks up to date on that one. The old Pfizer building, which is a tall steel office building on 42nd Street, yes, one of the main arteries cutting through Manhattan. On the east side, not far from the United Nations, they were converting it from an office building to residential. So, they want to get their bang for the buck. So the cranes have been out there, and they have been adding floors to the top of the building. Well, you should go online and take a look at this. They came into work today, and they found that the steel beams on the 21st floor were buckling. I'm presuming, I'm not a structural engineer, it has to do with the added weight above,
which I would presume the people adding the floors would have understood the load that the building could tolerate. And now the building is in danger of collapsing. Now, they've initially said collapsing, but they've now modified it to say partial collapsing. But while they were in there inspecting it, the building was literally moving. So not only did they evacuate the building, of course, but for a wide area on either side of the building, everything is evacuated. And of course, on ground level, a lot of those are retail establishments, but there are tall buildings, some of which are office buildings, but some of which are people's homes, their apartments, and they've been forced out of their apartments. And it is a terrible, terrible F-up by somebody. And thank God they caught this. Can you imagine if it had collapsed with people inside, with people going past on that busy thoroughfare? God forbid. Holy freaking camole. I can't wait to hear who's responsible for all of this. And if I was the person ensuring that project, talk about suicide, I would need social media for me to consider that. Whoa, that's going to bankrupt the insurance company. There are going to be a gazillion claims as a result of this terrible, terrible screw up. Back to the topic, however.
The people involved all deserve to go bankrupt, and I'll be succinct, as I always am, Gary. On Clubhouse, people always complain about how long construction projects cost these days and say the Hoover Dam was completed quickly and the Golden Gate Bridge was. That's all true, but what every single person on Clubhouse forgets is all those past construction projects completed quickly killed 50 to 100 workers. So I'm happy we're living in today's time.
And with different type of construction. When my son was going to Fordham, he was living off campus in a pre-war building. And I'm telling you, the walls are thick. I mean, you can pound your fist against the wall. Your neighbor's not going to hear a damn thing. These buildings were built, baby. They were built, and they still stand, and they still withstand. This is nonsense what's going on there. But let's get back to the topic.
Okay, so I'll be succinct. I feel like I spent my time on construction. So the bottom line is social contagion is real, and if children use social media, they will pick up some self-destructive things, maybe even deadly things. It is the responsibility of parents to control their kids' social media usage. Every parent should, and it's not the government's job. The government should play no role. Parents should play every role. I'm done speaking, Gary. Thank you for a great.
Thank you for that, Mickey. David, followed by Andrew.
All right, thank you. Well, several things I want to say. Number one, Mark Zuckerberg has said he doesn't let his kids on Facebook or use social media. So he has an understanding about the addictiveness or the issues that can happen with social media. And there's several other, tech, entrepreneurs who founded social medias who have said the same thing. They're not letting their own kids use the very platforms that they have created, which may contribute to some of the issues that have been talked about here. But another thing that people don't talk about as much is the number of parents who either exploit their own children on social media, often starting with creating their social media accounts for their kids when the kids are just born, right? Already securing the handles. But there's a whole category of people. They're on YouTube, they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, and, they're doing they say, oh, I have twins, and everybody thinks their twins are pretty, so they just put them all over the social media, right? Because they can make money off of their kids that way by showing, cutesy photos and showing them do interesting little things. You have the other group where it's like the whole family's on the, living, kind of doing their own little mini reality TV show, a lot more on YouTube, but living it out. So you have the parents themselves who are using the platforms as a way of being able to bring in revenue and make money. There's an interracial family where they have like about, I don't know, 11, 12 kids, and they show their whole family and their whole whatever edited version they put up there, their life on it. So you have a lot of adults themselves, adults with children, who have found that social media, is definitely a place for them to be able to go ahead and make money. So they doing the self-exploitation of their kids. They don't even really give their kids time to grow into being a young adult. Growing into being a child to even get to the point of knowing whether or not this is something they might want to do long term. They're just taking that choice for them. So, that itself is a problem. Should the government get involved and do it? I would say, like some of the other people here, no. I don't think the government should be the one getting involved in regulating it. I think that it should be left up to the parents. But I wouldn't be against the idea if parents, or certain things are happening due to kids being on social media and the parents weren't doing the job. I wouldn't be against extending the idea of neglect charges toward the parents, for engaging in some kind of neglect, for something that's extremely serious, right? That happens. And that's within the parent's control. I'm not against the schools doing something that Daryl was mentioning where, you don't have your social, they take your smartphones while you're in class, and then when you get out to get your smartphones back and get access back to that afterwards. I'm not against any of that kind of stuff. I think you can give rights to schools, public or private schools, to be able to determine whether they want the kids to have access to that. But ultimately, all of this is in the hands of the parents. And somebody just needs to talk to these parents out here who are getting their kids social media platforms once soon as they're born, and the parents who are out here exploiting their kids for money on the social media platforms. That's all I got to say.
Hey, piece of this space. You have to wait for your turn, Rambo. It's one at a time here. So, David, you bring up also a point that had not previously been discussed. So I appreciate your contribution. Andrew, followed by William.
Did you say my name? I couldn't hear you.
If your name is Andrew, I did. If it's not, I didn't.
Okay, well, it's actually, I have three names, but I'll go with Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, well, first off, iPhones have parental controls on them. You can avail yourself of them any time to ensure that your child is, you're monitoring what they're doing, et cetera, block out certain programs. Secondly, I just wanted to mention that although this didn't happen to a child, it happened to me. I got a phone call from a friend who said my image from my Facebook account was in an advertisement for Meta glasses, which I use because they're hooked up to my phone and they act as my a resource for my blindness. But I didn't approve it or agree to it. They just used it because it's on there and it's theirs. My picture is theirs. They own it. So this is some of the dangers of social media. Thirdly, I got a call.
Who owns it? So you're saying the social media site. When I just want to get to the nuance of this. So when you which social media site? Facebook. That's what I thought. So when we download Facebook, we don't read the terms of service, but we accept them. And in the fine print, it says that anything we publish on Facebook, they have the rights to. So then they see, or it may have come from the other direction, the company that manufactures the device sees that you're using their product, and they like the image. So they go to Facebook, or Facebook might approach them and say, hey, we own this, the rights to this. Would you like to buy them for your advertising? Or they say, we want to use it for our advertising. How much will it cost us? And because of you posting your photograph, you have made Mula Shula for Zuckerman, who, of course, we have to be considerate of because he's just barely making ends meet.
Yes, and to the point here, The glasses are called Meta, so it's Meta AI, which is Facebook. It's already its own the same company basically. So they just are using it regardless.
So you must be a good-looking guy.
I'm extremely handsome.
That's the reason why. So I would take it as a compliment.
And it looks like it's probably just targeted to her because she saw other ones with other people in them. I don't know that it's a widespread thing that my picture's way out there going out for Meta, but it could be, but I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of disturbing. The third thing is I got a phone call from a random number. I checked out the number where it was from. It was from Newfoundland, and it was an innocuous question. It was just, will you be coming to yoga tomorrow with me, Anna? So I just wrote back, I'm not Anna, because I knew it was Newfoundland, so I'm thinking, okay. So I said, I'm not Anna, blah, blah, blah. And then the conversation continued to the point where this person wanted to become a pen pal. And this is the danger of these phones. And it's like, well, I don't know who you are. I just know that you're in Newfoundland. Perhaps, maybe not, because these numbers can be hijacked. So, no, not happening. So I just wanted to say those three things. The next thing I want to say is that in Canada, in Ontario, and federally, we just passed legislation about what we're all talking about here today, with all of those safeguards, education, etc. in place. It's a ban on 16 and under in this province and federally. And it'll be controlled in terms of, like we have our CRTC, which is Communication Radio Television Commission, which controls the airwaves and Rogers and our internet providers, etc., homes. So this will be handled by the Child Safety, I believe is commission of some sort. Can't remember the exact acronym. But this is already in place. It was passed in June this year. The regular enforcement will be between the province and at the federal level. Of course, they have more powers in terms of investigative powers through the RCMP or CSIS or whatever. So this is already happening. And of course, we do have a cell phone ban during school hours, unless it's required for the curriculum and the education.
Another one is Gen Z. And one of the things I did for them was teach them not to disclose details about their identity. And I also created identities that did not correspond to reality for them to use to obfuscate who they are and where they are, so that they did not have to appear as themselves in every online interaction. But I taught them about the desirability and the dangers of, the desirability of withholding or hiding information and the dangers of disclosing information. So that's part of the education I tried to make them aware of, and I facilitated that by helping them create identities that don't disclose who they are, but actually confuse who they are presenting themselves to be, should they choose to do that. Certain things, by posting the photographs and things like that, invariably disclose a lot more information than it might be desirable, like Facebook, like Instagram. Meta products are geared towards disclosure of a lot of information. However, you can sign up for Facebook and Instagram with alternate IDs. For example, you can you can get alternate email addresses. Some of them, you can get an email address. Normally they would say, well, give me your old email to get a new email. But there's certain providers. There was one that was in Switzerland for a while that didn't require you to disclose an old email to get new email. And then from that, you could leverage into getting other IDs, which are not automatically disclosed and locked into your original email address tied to a SIM card.
So how does that protect the children?
Because then my children don't have to disclose or divulge who they are or where they are necessarily.
Well, what's the other point? Because they want to be able to talk to their friends
Well, that's why I said that there's an inherent problem with talking on apps like Instagram with posting the photos or Facebook, because they collect and divulge too much information. However,
by the way, Waymo, to your point, the parents are promulgating this. I know parents who post everything their little children are doing, and they post everything that they are doing. Some people who I know quite well, I know when they're, it's date night for mom and dad, and I know where the children are and what they're doing, because it's all there on the internet. Mom and dad willingly give that information out, and it's great because I'm close to this family and I get to see what they're doing. But it's not just their close circle of friends that are seeing it. The world is seeing it, including people who are very, very bad people who I'm sure peruse the internet looking for opportunities to take advantage of such security lapses promulgated by the parents.
I became aware of this sometime around 2007 as a real potential danger. If you take a look at my Facebook account, you'll see that a lot of the divulging of personal information about me and my family was really curtailed or eliminated in the mid-2000s. So that, yeah, there's some pictures of me with my kids when they're really little floating around out there, but I did not keep updating it for that very reason. And I think the use of IDs and personas which mask the identity can also be helpful to children, including not giving out their correct date of birth or place of birth or things like that. Just really trying to throw the dogs off the scent to some degree. So I think that's helpful. But they have themselves chosen to divulge their own information as they get older, and that I have no control over.
Remember, I mentioned before, when we download these programs, we agree to providing to the programs our personal information. They know what kind of women I appreciate, what kind of politics I appreciate, what kind of clothing I appreciate, what kind of food I appreciate. It's all there, and it's there when it comes to all of us. We have set ourselves up by accepting these quote-unquote free programs, and to them having more information about us than we may even realize about ourselves, that we may realize ourselves about ourselves.
Which is why I created identities that intentionally published false information about myself and my kids, including the dates of birth and other things, to actually make it harder so that when they use the alternate identities, it's not illegal, it's a legal alias. It's not an illegal alias because it's not being used for some nefarious criminal purpose. But when they use the alternate identities, then they don't automatically give up all the information about themselves if they choose to use, or if I choose to use the alternate personas on the internet. And sometimes people hide their identities, and for good reasons. So, there's a certain amount of control and privacy you can try to take to some degree, take back for yourself by actually giving out false information about your demographics at the outset when you open the accounts. And for example, I can if I use an email base in which I don't have to disclose an old email address, then that connection is severed. I'm not saying that the government can't figure out who I am or make the deductions about who's operating what device, but just the casual criminal or casual perverts might be thrown off the trail. So you don't have to always divulge complete, accurate, and truthful information. Sometimes it's advisable not to do so. Also, when you look at the broad-based experiment of governments restricting internet access and so forth, Russia has a new program which all citizens are obliged to download onto their mobile devices called Max, M-A-X, so that in order to get the social services, to the extent that they're getting any social services now, they have to go through the government program, and they've started to restrict the use of Telegram and try to shut that off, which was very popular with the Russians and countries like Iran and other countries have
the firewall. In addressing the question of protecting the children, right?
Well, protecting the children means that if you have your children use accounts which don't give out their age, say that they're 10 years older than they are, or don't give out their address, or don't give out their...
Yeah, but they all want to put selfies. Everybody wants to put selfies out there.
And that's why I said the biggest problem is Instagram for that sort of thing.
Well, none of these kids want to not put selfies, and adults are the same. Thank you, William. We'll go to Rambo, followed by L.
Hey, peace to the space. So, I'm very familiar with this topic. My thesis is based on, whereas I contended toxic content is having a negative impact on human behavior. And so in that scenario that was just laid out, I have 3 points I'm going to make. I think that we now are at a period where we simply have to onboard our children into social media. It's the same thing as teaching them how to ride a bike or tie their shoes, right? There has to be a process, there has to be a conversation had before they even go on to social media. And that conversation needs to be a straight, direct understanding the negative impacts of, how to manage your digital footprint, what this means. Like, they need to understand the consequences and the perils associated with social media, just straight up, right? And so, I work with young children, and one of the programs that we've had, maybe a year, 2 years ago, the assistant principal asked that we change our curriculum to mitigate the conflicts that youth are having via social media. And so that's what's happening on social media. It's like the Wild Wild West at this point. And so we did shift our curriculum up, and we are having conversations with younger students about social media. Today, I realized, and this is an interesting topic, which is my second point that I wanted to, I knew I saw it somewhere. So in today's Wall Street Journal, there's an article that I read. I just came about it. It was pretty interesting. And it talks about how, I believe in Texas, the Supreme Court has just made a ruling that parental, here it is, it's on page 814 of today's journal. It says parental consent in the smartphone age. And I'll just read the first paragraph. The dam seems to be breaking on legislative efforts to protect children on the internet. On Monday, yesterday, the Supreme Court declined to block a Texas law requiring app stores to verify users' age with a system of parental consent for those under 18. None of the justices expressed dissent. I repeat, none of the justices that ruled on this expressed dissent. So, and that's a good thing because parents want to be able to protect their children. And I think as our moderator Gary has indicated, there's no such thing as free. There's no such thing as a free app. The currency for the app is allowing them to monitor your digital footprint. Maybe not your personal information, that kind of thing, but certainly they can monitor your activity, your engagement with photos, everything they can monitor. And behavioral scientists can use that information to predict behaviors. They can geotag it. They can do just a lot of things with it. So there is no such thing as a free app. And so it becomes more important to us to manage our digital footprint, to mitigate the negative impact of toxic content and other concerns, inappropriate approaches to young underage children. So yeah, I just want to contribute to it. And that's why this topic caught my attention. So thank you for allowing me to speak, Harry.
Thanks for the contribution, Rambo. Very informative. L followed by Moose.
Hi there. Yeah, this is a really important topic. I personally believe that it's really important to grossly limit our kids' access to social media for all the reasons we've been talking about. The question of whether, who should have the jurisdiction in terms of supporting, when we look at a word like ban, then I wasn't in the room earlier, so I don't know if there's a story here about who's actually banning it, whose hands those decisions are made. I mean, I know that there are, I think in California, they passed a law where kids, have to drop their cell phone in a box before they go into the classroom and things like that. The question about, is this something that is the parents' jurisdiction? Is it something that's the schools? I can only say that I am 1,000,000% in favor of having 0 cell phones in school. I think it's first of all, it's a nightmare for teachers. Teachers can't teach because no matter, even when kids are saying they're looking at this or they're working on that, they're not. I mean, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but it's a distraction. And we know that because we are doing the exact same thing. Right now, I just checked it out. Presently, 69% of American kids between the ages of 13 and 14 have cell phones. And even at the age of 9, it was like 20%. So, it goes up with age, but even at 13, the 13-year-olds are so susceptible and so vulnerable when it comes to body image, when it comes to competition, when it comes to self-esteem. All that stuff that kids go through puberty is just so exacerbated when you start talking about things like TikTok and Insta, things like that. What do you do about it? Well, I would say, first of all, as a parent, my kids are, millennials. One of them is a stepmom to 4 kids, and they have 16-year-old twins. So at this point, at the age of 16, there's not a whole lot they can do other than try to guide them properly. But their screen time has been really, really, really limited from the time they were really not. They've been begging for it, begging for phones, and begging for all of it for years. And it's absolutely correct what William said about, I think it was William who said that, there are, maybe it was Andrew who said that there are, parental controls, absolutely. And even if you want on Facebook to, put a picture of your kid's bar mitzvah or their birthday party or whatever, you can also control who's going to see it. So there is a control on Facebook, or do you want this to go to the public, or do you want this to go to one person, or do you want to go to this to your small friend group? So there's some things you do have agency over, for sure. But I think the bigger question for me is, the culture, the world that we're living in. On the one hand, I'm delighted that I'm staring at a screen and I'm seeing all of you and hearing all of you, and that's a beautiful thing. But by the same token, we are addicted. And, this lifestyle we now are in, where we are scrolling mindlessly and getting pulled into endless rabbit holes. I mean, I question what that's doing to the quality of our lives. I question what that's doing to our ability to actually think, because those hours are wasted hours and they're not time spending. They're just being receptive, they're being passive, which also then brings up the question of what kids are getting in terms of information, because in the same way that the stuff that we're consuming, we don't know what's true or false, our kids are seeing the same stuff, and they certainly don't have the critical thinking capacity that I would hope we do. So I would say, as parents, it's just urgent, really. I would use the word urgent, that we're aware of our kids' use of social media. At the moment, my 4 grandchildren are at camp for 8 weeks, and their phones are at home. There's 0 devices allowed at their camp. They are running around being kids, going on camping trips, canoeing, being in plays, and they couldn't be happier. And it tells you something about what happens when you're not, connected to this, and when you're not pulled into the whole, toxic and addictive social media world, especially of influencers and who they think is, has credibility. I mean, you can't expect kids to sit there and go, well, now who is that person and what gives them any authority and what do I really think about that? And they're showing me how they, are on this drug and they lost all this weight. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I mean, we don't do that. How do we expect kids to do that? We are literally standing by and watching them. And I think we're doing it as some kind of part of it at this point is addiction and habit. But part of it is that we have a very lonely society. I mean, this really, is very connected, I think, to COVID. And, when Facebook started, it was, and when the internet started, it was amazing. It was like, my God, this is like Alexandria, how fantastic. When Facebook started, it was a wonderful way to connect, and I still like connecting on it. I still like knowing what my friends are up to. But its connection to Instagram and TikTok and and the many, many other social media platforms. I mean, there's so much that's good that's on it. I don't want to dismiss the good. There's so much incredibly educational material that's out there, entertainment that's out there, music that's out there, literature that's out there, and it's our source of news. But we have to be able to vet that news. We have to be, critical thinking. So those are my feelings about it. I think it's an incredibly important topic.
Thank you. We'll go to Moose, followed by Harsh.
Hello guys, thank you for that.
Moose, followed by Harsh. Moose.
Thanks, Gary. I'll try to keep it relatively short. I'll reiterate some of the things that Al had mentioned, particularly how vulnerable teens are with body shaming, and I mean adults are, for God's sakes, keeping up with the Joneses, let alone teens and their insecurity. And I think it's been magnified by social media. It's not to say that they're no good can come out of social media for teens. While I've been listening, I pulled up the CDC site, and I guess they did a study a few years ago in 2023, and probably not a huge shock that with the increase of social media that we have seen a significant spike in teen suicide from cyberbullying, and just keeping up with your peers and your classmates. There was a whole documentary series, I think, called Deadly Social Influence, that chronicles each episode is a separate documentary about big social influencers that are mostly in their teens, maybe early 20s, that need a tragic ending. So I think it's, to say just to ban it, I don't think history will show that works well. Whatever you take away from the kid, that they will just want 10 times more, and we'll get it when they're not at home. be it alcohol or the new drug of social media addiction. So yeah, I think Rambo was up here saying that you just have to sort of shepherd, and I think a lot of responsibility is on the parent. It's wild when you're in the park or at a restaurant, you see like an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old sitting at the dinner table, whatever, at a cafe or restaurant table with their parents, and they're just, the parents give them the phone so the kid doesn't melt down, so they can amuse the child while they're just trying to have a moment of peace or have a conversation about whatever, versus interacting with said child and putting the foot down and saying, we're at the dinner table, whether it's at a public restaurant at home, there isn't no phones. So yeah, I would just say it. I don't know. I think the ban's extreme.
Yeah, but you gotta lead by example, How many times have you been out to a restaurant and you see everybody's got the mom, the dad, the son and the daughter, they're sitting in the booth at the diner, and everybody's on their phone and nobody's talking to one another, and it's like, well, why are you even bothering going out to eat?
You read my mind, Gary. That was actually my next point. Is I was like, well, it's like right. It's like, but then the kids are emulating the parents that are. I'll take it further. I've been at restaurants where I've actually seen parents on the phones and the kids just staring at each other, playing with their napkins or something. And I'm sure some of it is work related, or did I get that interview? Maybe dad or mom's paying a quick bill online. But yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. It's completely hypocritical to say that adults are not. Forget about even walking, spending time with your family.
How many of us are on call? Emergency surgeons. How many of us are on call? Right. How many of us are on call homicide detectives? How many of us are on call Homeland Security or FBI? How many of us are there?
Yeah. Pretty small percentage, and I'll just say, I'll finish with this, and it's not just, it's when teenagers are seeing parents, and I'm not just talking about a full-grown adult in their 30s, 40s, or 50s crossing the street, oblivious that they're jaywalking against a red light, but they got their head buried in TikTok on their phone, but they're pushing a stroller with them. Like sometimes I just will actually say something. I'm like, can you do it? Can you cross the street with your baby without looking at the phone? And they just give me this, you can imagine this leer, this or this. Sometimes they get mad. Sometimes they actually put their phone right away, and they're like, yeah, they get it. They're being completely irresponsible. So that's
it's just amazing the number of times.
It's wild. This is how
you're in New York City. You're in New York City. How many times people have bumped into me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's my responsibility to get out of your way.
Get out of their way. That's right. That's right. How dare you? How dare you have the audacity to expect a grown adult to look up from their phone and acknowledge another human being or car or bike or what have you is coming in their path. Let Moses clear the part the sea for this cellular use. Thanks.
Thank you, Moose. We miss you. Harsh, followed by Ed.
Thank you, Gary. I just want to say, before I begin, I'm from India, Russian and stuff. So, and thank you for being here. And I also want to say one thing, that you guys can interrupt me. Gary, Alan, and Scotty, anyone can interrupt me before anything I say. So, I just want to say one thing. I'll say it in the comparing of India, because people out here using all those children use this app. You guys have a different view about those things, that if a children is watching on the social media, then they are mad, they will be having all those thinking and different thoughts out there. But I want to say that if a children is using social media, if you allow that, and that's a different danger to a parent as well. Not in terms of if their child memory or anything is intellectual or thing is being in a danger, but their parents their parents. The money and all those, the parents' privacy also is in a danger because that's a cyber crime, and we are facing out there now, and that could come to America as well because I have heard all those stuff that Indian things and Bangladesh and all those stuff. These guys are scamming out there to American people. So what we are facing, let me tell you guys what we are facing right now in India. So uh, if anyone, just for an example, if there's an Apple is a company called Apple, right? So they are legit. They have all those stuff. They are good locked up. About all the HTTP, DCP, DCC. That nobody can hack them. But what about their vendors? They are also locked up, man. Nobody can hack them. But what about their vendors? That's how the hacker get all those people. Same case to the children's as well. So if children's go to social media, post all the stuff, man, that's very, very, very easily they can get to the parents. I can give you a live example of how. Just take an example of MobiWik. I don't know how many people know about the MobiWik hack. MobiWik was an app for the payment stuff, and the hackers didn't hack them because they were weak and they were soft about their all those security, because they were hacked because of their vendors. Their vendors they didn't have that much security as much as MobiWik. So same thing goes to the children's as well. Children go to the social media and they can post all the stuff, photos, videos. That's the small stuff. They can also just go to social media and talk to any people, sharing anything. I don't know, but if they do it and like this, that's the. I think that's a big stuff if they talk to anyone. But even if they share anything, and even if they're not, even if they're just scrolling out there, that's a big threat as well because people like hackers, like I see out there in India, Bangladesh, not in India, I expect India, they don't do that one, Bangladesh and stuff. That's the easy target to the American or any country or anyone that if a children has a social media page, in Instagram page, that they share stuff and they do stuff, and let's bring AI in that stuff. If AI is there, that's the easy thing to blackmail or do anything. They just
Gershon, I'm going to interrupt you only because we have 60 seconds left, and I want to give Ed 60 seconds, okay?
So sure. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Ed, I'm sorry, but I will give you 60 seconds.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good thing to ban it, but unfortunately, that's probably just the first step to later on, ask adults for ID in order to use the internet and, all that biometric stuff and things like that. So that's the downside. And if I have a magic wand, I will deal computers, the internet, social media, everything. No Clubhouse, no OnlyFans, whatever. Because humanity is going down the toilet, and for the sake of humanity, I think we will be better off without all this technology. We won't have the China problem. We won't have the Palantir and all those freaks that are, threatening humanity. AI will be gone. So, yeah. Thank you, Gary.
Oh my God, he wants to take OnlyFans away. Thank you, Ed. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock New York time, so till 5 o'clock New York time tomorrow for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum. Everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
The Morning Pen report spoke about welfare dependency as a symptom of divorce, separation, and illegitimacy among poor urban blacks. In the decades that followed, these programs became a major cause.
I will die knowing I will never come across that in a black man. I'm so fucking confused.
Yeah, Isaac, it takes a certain amount of intelligence to be able to recognize and steer clear of bad people. And, and some people just don't have that ability, or a lot of it, when it comes to issues of romance, their desire to find a relationship overwhelms, and this is women especially fall victim to this. They meet a guy and they put on blinders, and they do no harm. Once they get emotionally invested, they don't let go no matter what he does. So, it may seem foreign to you, and I get it. Yeah.
Wait, so Alan, you never told us who's your basketball team?
Oh, Celtics.
Oh, it is? Okay, this is okay.
Yeah, and thank you, Sig, for letting me have a white man trying to cope moment.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, but Isaac, see, here's the thing. I got a beef with you. Okay, Sig in his time with the black woman, he was married. So we let him graduate to white women. There's a lot of fine black women who are looking for a fine black man like you. You gotta do your and support your people against the oppressive white. The man that's keeping you people down. You gotta do your job.
That's right. Okay. You gotta put in some work first, Isaac.
Are you saying he needs to date a black woman before he get the white woman?
That's right.
Yes, he's got early strikes, David. Yep.
So unfortunately, Alan, that kind of fucked up in 2005. I will explain. Well, it's 2026. I know. But in 2005, I passed the test. That test took away my blackness. Oh, wow. That test was becoming a hacker, and after that, it was like, nah, you can't, your skin color's black. You are no longer black. That's what happened. I didn't know that. So, I can date hacker woman. That's who my people are. My people are no longer black. I'm sorry. It happened. Wow.
Yeah, he just came to the front of the line, man. That's some bullshit, Isaac.
Well,
some bullshit, bro. Said, fuck this, I'm going right to the front.
No, it's true. Remember, I'm from Massachusetts, so.
Knox. They were using any excuse to kill women back then.
Well, that's true.
I think, Alan, that'd be a great litmus test for women to be allowed to vote. Change the center block to them. If they sink, they're legit. If they float, then they're fucking fake.
Sig, I'm surprised. Like, I've been having conversations with friends who are like middle of the road, who are starting to understand the fact that maybe